Welcome to the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the stories, experience that challenge and shape us into who we have become today. Our today guest is Michael Bugary, a former professional baseball player, turned motivational speaker, and author of Disease of Me. After losing his baseball career, battling addiction, and surviving brain cancer, Michael now shares his stories to help others find hope and resilience in the face of adversity. It's really a pleasure having you on the show,
Thank you. Very,
Michael.
very good to be here. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, Michael, what were some of the moments or challenges that shape you into who you have become today?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think most of it was failure, right? I think failure and adversity and hard times really shaped me to who I am. I mean, going through it at the time, it wasn't fun or pleasurable, right? But I think I had a lot of good times playing professional baseball, and traveling the country and doing all these things. But and those were good times. But I don't really remember lessons from them. What I really remember is losing my baseball career, that injury, and then going through addiction and that suffering and that struggle. That it's not wasn't those acts of and then the brain cancer. Obviously, it wasn't those acts that actually it was the suffering through it that shaped me into who I am. Going through that, getting to
Mm.
that depth of despair and depression in my mind, being trapped in my prison of my own mind. I think it really just showed me who I am and what I want to be. So yeah, I've been through a lot of these big things, but I would say the struggle and the failures are really what shaped me into who I am.
The struggles and the failure. Wow, that's a really a whole lot. So, when your professional baseball career ended, or because of injury, how did that moment impact your sense of purpose and direction in life?
Yeah, it didn't really. It turned me inward because when I felt like I lost baseball, I felt like I lost who I was. I felt like I lost, that part, my whole being, my whole self worth, everything that I went through. It turned me inward. So I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to accept a life without baseball because it was when I was playing, it became who I was, and I didn't plan for a future without it. And I think that happens to a lot of really talented athletes growing up, and whatever
Yeah,
sport that you play, if you get a lot of recognition early on and people are telling you that you're going to be this and you're going to be that, you really just you don't focus on the life after sports. There's no early intervention into, hey, maybe I should work on managing my bank account, or maybe I should work on uh,
yeah,
conflict management, or maybe I should get a summer job, maybe I should do these little things to prepare me for a life after sports, because sports don't last forever. I mean, sure, especially competitive sports where you're playing professionally, and we think they do because that's what the thing about being young, right? Is we think that these things that we have, where they're going to last, is going to be forever. I'm going to live
yeah.
fast and die young, whatever it may be. But I just didn't prepare for it, and so what happened is I turned to poor coping mechanisms after, right? Because I didn't want to think and I didn't want to talk about it. Everybody wanted to talk to me about baseball because I made it my personality, so everybody knew me for that, and I didn't want to talk about it. So what I did, I turned to opiates and strong drugs because that numbed my feelings, and I didn't have to think and I didn't have to worry about the future. So it just kept me in that place where I didn't.
Yeah, yeah, that was really, really a whole lot. And I'm just wondering what it would have been like being that growing up, you already skilled with baseball and having to, that has been part of your identity and having to change everything again was really a whole lot. And I'm wondering how it would have been like, and so turning more like to drugs and everything seems to be the norm, being that they just have to kind of, they create this false perception of, yeah, you still have it all together. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's really a whole lot. Yeah. So you later faced a brain cancer diagnosis and multiple
Yeah.
surgery. What was going on through your mind during that season of your life?
Yeah, it's a good question because I think 'cause it all ties together. So at that point when I was diagnosed, I was still in battling. I had lost my baseball career and I was still battling addiction, and then I got, it started to seem like I was getting things together, and then all of a sudden I got these headaches and I got this diagnosis, and I think that gap between baseball and brain cancer, I was kind of just surviving. I was just living. I wasn't really living. I wasn't present in the moment. I was just caught. I was still in that point of non acceptance without baseball because truthfully, I was angry. I was full of anger and blame. You know, I was mad at
Yeah.
baseball. I was mad at God. I was just mad at the world, right? And I mean, really, I was mad at myself. That's the biggest thing, because all the choices that were my fault, really. But I couldn't admit that yet. So when I was diagnosed and I was sitting in that hospital room, and they were giving me the percentages of my chances to live, and just telling me all this information that I couldn't comprehend. I was indifferent. I didn't care. I didn't care. I was, you know, my mindset was like my life was over anyway. I wasn't thinking about like my mom or my parents or what they're going through. I wasn't thinking about other people. I was just,
Hmm.
hey, they're gonna give me some good drugs in the hospital now. So let's just get on with it. No, I didn't think that I was gonna die, but I didn't care either. You know, I was mentally, physically, and spiritually broken, and I went even further down.
Wow, that was really a whole lot. I'm just wondering more like what's your internal would have been then, being that a whole lot of anger here and there, angry with God, angry with a whole lot of things, and yeah, it's really a lot. And so after everything went through medically, addiction still remain a challenge. What helped you finally begins the journey towards recovery?
Yeah, that's, you know, it didn't happen overnight. I think, you know, there wasn't really one thing. There was just a series of events, and I call them spiritual experiences, you know, because they came
Mm,
from something outside of me, right? I couldn't, you know, it
mm,
was God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. I think the first one was, it was a moment that I had where I realized, I finally saw myself through other people's eyes, right?
mm,
It was a moment where, you know, where I had to be shown what a jerk I was, what an a-hole I was, you know, how selfish that I was. And when I was, and because I think I knew that I had a problem, I knew that I had, you know, issues with drugs. I knew that I wasn't doing the right things, but I didn't feel it. I didn't feel it. I knew it, but I didn't feel it. And then they say that, right, that gap between your head and your heart is like the farthest 18 inches, right? For me to be able to get it to here. And I think that moment I finally felt it. And when you feel something, when you really feel it in your bones, I think that is what causes change to happen. And then so I think that was the
mm.
first step. And I was starting to take personal responsibility. You know, I think acceptance is a hard thing to do, right? Because when you accept something, you don't
Yeah.
necessarily approve of it, right? I didn't, I don't, I didn't approve of all the bad choices that I made, but accepting them means that I acknowledge that they happened and I can't change them. And then I can move forward. So I can't close a door on it because I have to learn from those lessons, but I have to just acknowledge that they happened and I can't do anything about it. And then can I move forward? And there was that moment of introspection that I had. And then I had a really cool, I have a therapy dog that I take to the hospitals now and stuff, and he came into my life. He really helped me change. And then there was a few other things, but it all just kind of came together. And I realized that, you know, that I really that the problem is me. Right. That's why my book's called
Mm,
The Disease of Me, because I have a disease of me. I'm the problem.
yeah.
Right. But I'm also the solution too, right? And that's the paradox of it, is that I have to do the work. I have to show up, and I have to do face these hard things that I always ran from. Because me, what I want to do, I want to get high and avoid my problems. That's really what I want to do. That's who I will always be. But you know, to live in that solution, I have to take that responsibility. I have to manage all this pain that I'm in, right? And then I have to work on my relationships with God and with other people. Because the closer I am to God, the further away I am from myself, and the more open I am to
Mm.
other people. So that's kind of how it all went together for me, to be able to make change. You know, I had to go through a lot of pain and hardship.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. I think it's really a whole lot there, being that especially when you just make reference of the point that acceptance, what actually more like make you realize that yes, every of those things that actually went on truly happens, and accepting the fact that it happens make you take responsibility of the
Yeah.
little step towards getting better and towards seeing the possibility of what could I do different to change this outcome that I'm already saying? And yeah, it's a whole lot. So exercise and meditation became important tools for you. How
Yeah.
did it help you manage chronic pain and rebuild your life?
Yeah, so after the type of brain tumor that I had, right before cancer, up to this point, I used painkillers, right? I used them for my mental pain, right? I think chronic
Mm,
pain can be different for all of us. And that's why I said managing my pain is so important, because when I'm in uncontrollable pain, I only think about myself, right? That's all I can think about. So up to this point, I had only used opiates and painkillers for my mental pain, my depression and not thinking. But after my brain cancer diagnosis and the surgeries and the chemotherapy and the radiation, the tumor that I had was extremely rare, and so the treatment that they gave me, they didn't really know, what it was going to do necessarily for in terms of side effects, because the type of tumor that I had is called the medulloblastoma, which is more common in children and not in adults. And so it's a brain tumor of the cerebellum, and it's of the nervous system. So all of my side effects that I had were just intense nerve pain all over my body, and I still deal with them now. But just like I could feel signals through my body and it would accumulate at my fingers and toes. So like clenching my fist really hard would give me a really bad headache, or curling my toes would give me a really bad headache. It all started here, and it was so painful all the time, and I got to a point where I call it a limbo of agony, where it hurt too much to sit still and it hurt too much to move. And I either
Hmm.
I had two options, right? I either had to roll over and give up and die, or I had to do something different. And one of my, after the surgeries, you have to go through, regular MRIs and seeing all these doctors and things after all that. And I remember one trip, I was just so frustrated. I was just noticeably angry, and I got to my doctor and I was just unloading on him. And he looked at me. I think he was kind of joking, and he said, "Can you download the Calm app, which is like a meditation app?" He made a joke like, "Download the Calm app," and I was like, I was like, at this point, I was ready to do anything. I want to take any suggestion. So I downloaded the app, and I went through it and started, because I was always one of those people that I have a racing mind. I can never sit still and meditate. I can never think of that. And
Hmm.
so I downloaded it, and I started trying it. I wasn't good at it at first, and then kind of at the same time, I was also starting to read books, because I didn't have any answers. I was starting to read books about other people going through hard times, and I read this book talking about this doctor who dealt with people with phantom nerves, right? So say somebody loses an arm or a leg, they can still feel the sensations of that arm and that leg, and it kind of gave me an idea that maybe if through meditation I can learn to move my fingers and limbs, my fingers and toes without moving them, just sending the nerve signals. Because what it felt like for me, especially in my feet, is that I had one big toe. I couldn't feel individual toes. I had lost all feeling. So I was hypersensitive and also numb. So I was thinking, maybe if I, and that was really hard to walk and do anything, and it was really frustrating. So I felt like if I could really focus on my fingers and my toes, each one, and I can do that, sit that through meditation, that maybe I can start to get some feeling back. And it worked. At first it was so painful, I would like pass out, because it hurt so much to really focus on it. But then when I started to get some feeling back, then I would go into the weight room, or on the treadmill, and I would really focus on, moving my feet individually. And we take that for granted, right? We take for granted like the little movements of our feet and our toes and our shins, and how they help us move. And I had to reteach myself how to do all that, to grip the ground, and I did that, and slowly I started to build up to more explosive workouts. And now I do a lot of Olympic lifting that really helps me, a lot of balance training. But it was that slow process of just having to heal my nervous system. I never had dealt with nerve pain before, and it was, remarkable. I don't know how it worked, Arrow, but it did. And I have about
Yeah.
75% feeling back now. But it was a long, painful process. It's a lot of time alone. A lot of things that you're not going to get credit for. That I had. And that's why I say my failures and suffering shaped me, because it was in those moments, in those hard times, in those little details of just crying and pain, that I really found out who I was. That's where I really found strength. And that's really
Yeah.
what shaped me.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Finding strengths even in adversity. And I think it just speaks volumes from the point you make earlier on, that acceptance make it easier for you to take responsibility of
Yeah.
what you need to do, or to actually more like, oh yeah, get the change you actually want to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said that our suffering often happen when we isolate ourselves. Why is connection so important in overcoming adversity?
I think for me, I did so much alone for so long, right? I was so alone, and I had to come with acceptance and personal responsibility. You realize that, I really don't know anything, right? I really, I kind of been wrong about everything. I've been wrong about the tooth fairy. I've been wrong about what I was going to do with my life. I've been wrong about, I've been wrong about everything. And that's not to say that I don't have some wisdom and some lived experience, but it means that hey, I'm not the center of the universe, and I don't control
Yeah.
things. I really have little control, and that feeling that feeling was just like, man, that's what a relief, what a weight off my shoulders, that I don't have to know everything, that I don't have to be in charge of everything. Let somebody else do that, let my higher power do that. And then once I realized that, then I started to look into a world that was beyond me. And then when I
Yeah.
was able to do that, I was able to see other people, and then going through it and helping other people and sharing my story. And because, and, for example, like I talked about my therapy dog, I take him to the children's hospital all the time. And I meet these strangers going through the hardest times of their life. And I sit and talk with them, or I share my story with them. And what it does is, it makes me think of my family, of my mom, of all the people that I've hurt.
Mm.
And as difficult as these thoughts are to have, they change the way that I think, right? And I can only have these type of thoughts is when I help somebody else, when I'm connected to somebody else without the expectation of something in return, right? Because when I'm
Yeah.
caught in the prison of my own mind, that's when all my selfish things and everything happen. That's when I have all the answers. That's when I become the only person in the room, right? When you're the smartest person in the room, you're the only person in the room, for me at least, right? So I have to be connected to other people, and especially now, even in my recovery, my recovery from drugs and alcohol. I'll have in a month I'll have 5 years sober of all drugs and alcohol. And through that experience, though, I've had to open up to people. I've had to share things and do things, and build a safety net around me of people that I can call. Hey, my thinking is flawed, right? It always is going to be flawed. The first thing that comes into my mind is usually not something I should do. So I have people to bounce those things off of. Because if I get it out in the open, if I tell on myself, if I explain it, then I can see how ridiculous it is sometimes. But if I keep it inside, then I'll just think it's a good idea, right? So that's why, connection is so important. Is I have to be connected to the world around me. I can't be connected to the world in me. It has to be the one outside of me.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. I think just speak volumes to the point again that, yeah, suffering happen when we isolate ourselves, and through
Yes,
connection.
yes,
Yeah, overcoming adversity becomes easier. And that's really amazing. So looking back now, how has losing your baseball career, addiction, and brain cancer shape your perspective on?
yeah. It's good. Another great question. I think what it does now for me is I had to shift my perspective. I had to look at the things that I've gained, not that I've lost. Right? Because on paper it might
Mm,
look like I've lost a lot of things. I've lost, a dream career that I thought, fame and money and all those things, and I lost a lot of family and friends through addiction. I hurt a lot of people, and then with brain cancer, I lost a lot of my youth and my invincibility and my physical, a lot of stuff. Maybe even some brain cells. I mean, I lost a lot of brain cells too, but my point is that yes, I've lost all those things, but really I've gained so much more. I've gained so, like, through baseball, I learned sports. I learned leadership. I learned determination. I learned strength. I learned how to be calm under pressure, and to be resilient. Through addiction, I learned, how to pursue things with complete passion. Right? If I chase my life and the things that I want to do with the same veracity that I chase drugs, then I can accomplish anything. I learned what not to do. I learned, how not to do those things through addiction. Through brain cancer was the biggest gift of all, because it taught me empathy and compassion for other people, right? Because I was always so judgmental, and I always, so I just didn't care about anybody else. But once I started to get my hair back after chemotherapy, and once I started to put some weight back on, people would treat me like I was normal. And that bothered me sometimes because I was hurting so much on the inside. But what it made me realize is that, everybody's going through something. Everybody's going through some invisible condition that they have inside of them that we don't often think about. And what that made
yeah.
me do was it made me see people differently, and not to just judge people, and not to just, hey, maybe,
Yeah.
no matter what people are doing, maybe they're going through something that you don't quite understand. So you give the benefit of the doubt. If you're angry or mad with somebody, or do something nice for them. It's all those failures just changed my perspective, right? And then it leads to the most important thing, Arrow, for me, is that, the why. Why did all these things happen to me? That doesn't matter. Most of them happen because of me and my choices, but the why I am the way I am doesn't matter. What am I going to do about it matters. What am I going to do about
Yeah.
the second chance that I've been given? How am I going to use all these gifts and all these things that happen to me to help other people, and what am I going to do with it every day? So that's the most important thing for me is that perspective of what do I do with this? Because there's so many people out there that didn't get that second chance that I had. There's so many people that didn't survive the things that I survived. What am I going to do with it?
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I think they just speak volumes to those who have gone through a lot, which is addiction or a whole lot of hate issue, other stuff. They have more like when it comes to more like having compassion on others, they have it a whole lot, being that they know what it take going through addiction, they know what it take going through health issues. And owing to that, they could actually more like serve as a helping hands to many persons who are already there compared to the outward people who hasn't gone through that experience. Their impatience is not tested compared to the who have gone through it. And I'm glad you're actually more like doing a whole lot with that particular
Yeah.
experience and through the book you write and through showing off. Yeah, thank you so much. So for someone
Yeah.
listening now who feel trapped in their own struggle right now, what message will you want them to hear today?
Yeah, I think there's two things that I say is that first of all, our self-worth has to come from within, right? Always
Yeah.
chased validation from outside, and the way motivation from the outside, and the best way that uh I've built self-worth up from the inside is through discipline, through small little wins every
Mm,
day, creating little routines that help me, whether it be writing five things that you're grateful down every morning, or meditating for 5 minutes in the morning, just creating little habits that build up wins, because that just builds up your confidence from the inside. And the second thing I would say, if that's too challenging to do at that point, for me it was like that for a while. I couldn't do those things for a while because I was so in so
yeah.
much pain. Is get outside of yourself and help somebody else, whether it be going up and
Mm,
helping somebody move, help a neighbor move, or mow somebody's lawn, or go volunteer, whatever it may be, however bad you're feeling, go help somebody else and see how you feel afterwards. And
yeah.
that's the main thing.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Put down those things you're grateful for, write those things you actually want to change, and also go all out to actually more like lend a helping hand. And I think the last one is very, very convenient. That sometimes we don't find ourselves until we lose them in service for others. And just
Yeah.
doing that just speak a whole lot of volumes. So, Michael, for my audience who want to read your book and who want to get your book,
Yes.
The Disease of Me, can you tell us what is going to be their take home after reading the book?
Yeah, I think the take home is that no matter where we go, no matter how high you go, how low you're, whatever place that you're in, that adversity and pain, we're all going to face it. We're all going to face it no matter what. And I think
Yeah,
how we handle those obstacles is practice for the ones that we're going to face tomorrow, right? And i
yeah,
think i think the most important thing is those obstacles and those failures and those things that we face are we're meant to, and we get stronger from them, right? When we avoid
yeah,
them, when we don't take risks, when we hide from them, that's when we really fail. But when we face
yeah.
them and mess up and fail over. So I think my story is about all of the bad things, and the depths of my mind, and the things that took me to the point of where I had to get to turn things around. So I think that some of those things I mentioned about helping other people, and personal responsibility, I
Yeah.
think that those are messages in there, and I just hope it helps other people to know that they're not alone, and that we all face hard times, and because it was always the stories of other people that helped me the most, and I hope my story can
Yeah,
can help them the same way.
amazing. Thank you so much. I think this is really lovely. Mean that adversity is something that is definitely going to come at every point in life, one area or the other. And having a whole lot of mental model of those who have gone through it, even worse than the one you are thinking of, and seeing them going through it and coming out strong. Tomorrow is going to be better. Tomorrow is going to be fine.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing hearing your stories. So, Michael, from our audience who want to reach out to you, who want to connect with you, get your materials or for any service at all, how can they reach out to you and where's the best platform?
Yeah, so my website is www.michaelbugary.com, MichaelBugary. So you can go there. You can send me an email, talk to me on there. You can sign up for my email list. I send things out. I'm on Facebook at Michael Bugary, and Instagram at mbugary. And my book, The Disease of Me, is available on Amazon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. Your journey just reminds us that even the most painful experience can become the foundation for growth and purpose by choosing honesty, connection, and resilience. It's possible to rebuild and move forward. Yeah, thank you to our listener. This is the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the experience that shape our life and the lessons that help us become who we are meant to be. Once again, a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Eric, for your time.